Hello friends, welcome to episode 30 of Reconstructing Cave Story. This episode is going to be kind of special because it is going to mark the beginning of a few refactor bug fixes. Actually, that doesn't make it that special, but that's what we're going to be doing for the next few episodes. We're going to just be making some small cleanups to make development go faster in the long run, and also a couple bug fixes. So in this episode, we're going to be working on the SpriteState, which I mentioned in the last episode that we were going to be using a boost tuple. In the next episode, that time is now. And mostly what we're going to be solving with the boost tuple is an operator less than. We have to define it right now for all of our sprite states, and that's getting obnoxious, so let's fix that. And then we're also going to make sure our enum loops are a little bit less painful than they are now, because our enum loops are just very verbose, and we can just use our preprocessor to our advantage a little bit. So let's start with the boost tuple, and we'll implement this before we get into the enums. But the boost tuple has some interesting syntax. It is a templated type, and you can put as many types in the template variables as you want to, I think. And this uses some magic that I will not go into. And construction of a boost tuple is the same for all tuples of any size. You can just call boost make tuple, giving it the correct arguments, and it will produce a tuple of the correct type. And the accessors, of course, we need these two for the horizontal facing would be get, and then templated 0 and templated 1 to in addition to our get method, returns our horizontal facing and our vertical facing. So let's start with that. So I'll go into our polar star because that's the most recent. It's all fresh in our minds still. So let's go down to where we define our struct sprite state. So I'm also going to type def out our tuple type. So we'll call it SpriteTuple. And we need to include some stuff, so let's include boost tuple /tuple.hpp. And then we also need to include tuple comparison.hpp. So this sprite tuple is going to have a horizontal facing and a vertical facing. So let's call it boost tuple feeding it horizontal facing and vertical facing. Now, instead of making our sprite state a new struct, I'm going to have it implement this tuple interface. So I'll do public inheritance, and I'm going to get rid of this constructor because we can use the make tuple constructor. And then the other thing is we don't need these data fields, but it'd be nice to have these as accessors. So I'm going to make accessor functions, and I'm going to call this horizontal facing and not change the name, just add parentheses and just have it return get 0, because remember our horizontal facing is our first element and it's 0 based. So get 0. And we need to actually return this value, so let's return. And we'll do the same for vertical facing, except get 1 instead of 0. Again, because vertical facing is the second element and 0 based. Okay, so now we've adjusted our sprite state and we have an operator less than, so we can get rid of this operator less than. I'll go into this, and we no longer have a sprite state constructor, so let's see if we can change this to boost make tuple. And it isn't happy with this because we don't actually have an implicit conversion from the tuple type to our sprite state type. And this is easy to make, so I'm just going to make it here. So sprite state, taking in a sprite tuple, call it tuple. We can just construct our superclass called the SpriteTuple, and or base class is what I mean. And now that should be happy because we have an implicit conversion from this tuple type to our sprite state. Again, we need to change this to boost make tuple. I'll line this up for fun, kicks, grins, giggles. And now I'm going to build and run just to see if this works. And so our build failed because we are trying to use our horizontal facing, which is a function, as if it's a variable. So let's add that to vertical facing and horizontal facing. So here we go. Oh, and the other thing is we need to make these functions const. Okay, now I should be able to build and run just to see that this is all working. It built correctly, so I'm assuming it is working correctly. And we still have everything working with our gun, so I'm happy with this. I'm going to wait a bit till after I do the enums refactoring to finish up the other sprite maps, like the first cave bat in the player. So I'm just gonna jump into the solution number 2, which is our enum loops are painful. So let's add macros, and we have this established convention. Let me open up sprite map or SpriteState.h. We have this established convention where you have a first underscore and then whatever it's called, and a last underscore and then whatever it's called. So this is awesome. If you have this convention, you can make a macro that kind of plays on it. So this macro is going to be, and I should give you guys a warning, like macros are very powerful, but they can be very painful if you don't use them correctly, or yeah, just be careful with them. Like make sure you know what you're doing with them first. But there's this thing in macros where, yeah, I mean, you can pass in arguments to macros, and it takes a value and uses a value. But if you use the pound symbol, it actually uses the symbols, the literal characters, and not the value itself that it represents. So we can use this to our advantage. So for example, we call macro with horizontal facing, and this is the macro we've defined where it's first underscore pound enum name, and enum name is horizontal facing. This is equivalent to first horizontal facing, the names combined. So we can use this to our advantage. So I'm going to make a for each loop. So it's going to be enum for each is what I'm going to call it. And it's going to take in a variable name. I'll just call it var, and an enum name. But you can't do it like that. So make sure you escape the last character, the new line, because pound define ends on a new line, so make sure that you're escaping that. So the way this looks is if we look at our polarstar.cc, we can just copy and paste a for loop and just change it to the correct values. So we can change this h facing to our var, and we can change this first horizontal facing to first pound enum name. Same with the last horizontal facing, last pound enum name. And then the h facing will change to var. And I'm going to get rid of this opening curly brace. So this is one way of doing it. There's actually one more thing that I kind of want to do because, oh no, I don't actually want to do that, so never mind. Yeah, this is our enum for each loop, and this just is gonna make it a lot easier to do our enum loops. So let me show you how it works. We can just type in enum for each, passing it h facing as the name of the integer we want to use, and horizontal facing. And do the same thing except with v facing and vertical facing. And that's the only cleanup I want to do for our enum for each. So I'm going to build and run and make sure that this works all correctly. Generating code. Okay, let's see. And yeah, it looks good to me. Okay, sweet. So these are the only two improvements that I want to make in this episode. So I'm going to do this again for the first cave bat and again for the player class. So to make this easier, I'm going to collect all of the different SpriteState information we need and just put them in the SpriteState header file so we don't have to keep remembering to include the shared pointer, the tuple comparison in all of our files. So that's one more thing, I guess, that makes this easier. So let's go to the first cave bat because that'll be significantly easier than the player class. Oh, where are you? Okay, so we can get rid of these and instead include our SpriteState. We can get rid of our facing because this is really just a horizontal facing. Okay, get rid of our operator less than. Now let's make our type def for a SpriteTuple. This is going to be a boost tuple of just a single horizontal facing. Derive from it. And implicit constructor it and make a getter method. Of course const and return get 0. And then let's look at our CC file and make sure that, I think I forgot something. So it looks like I should also name this to be horizontal facing and not just facing. Are you happy? Build again. Okay, yeah, so it's this, let's just replace our enum for each, and it'll be facing, H facing, horizontal facing. And we'll cast it to a horizontal facing. Change the SpriteState constructor to boost make tuple. And again. And make this facing into a horizontal facing getter call. I'm going to build. I think that's everything we need. I'll run, see if the bat is working. Facing the player, doing his thing. Facing the player, doing his thing. Sweet. Okay, now it's time to do the player. So I'll open up player.h and player.cc. Player.h, player.cc. Let's start in player.h with our, let's make sure that we're including, instead of these three things, our SpriteState, which should cover it. Cool. So let's go back down here and create our type def, boost tuple. What's it going to be? Motion type, horizontal facing, and vertical facing. And we'll call that SpriteTuple. Change this constructor to be a copy constructor from SpriteTuple, or implicit constructor, which is why we're using it. Get rid of this monstrous operator less than. Create some getter methods, const of course. think that's all we need to do in the header file. Let's go to the CC file and implement stuff down here. So SpriteState is getting an error here. Because this is an operator less than, and we don't need it anymore. Get riddance. Jeez. Okay, yeah, so now we want to construct it with boost make tuple with 2 colons. And let's change our enum. Oh, these are so horribly ugly. No, they're not that bad. So enum for each motion. But isn't that just so much better? I mean, if we didn't have to type these a million times, it wouldn't be worth it, but we do. Much nicer. Okay, so now inside of here we need to change all of these to our getter methods. So horizontal, we'll start with horizontal facing. That one was easy. Motion type, we'll do motion type next. And vertical facing. I think that's it, so I'm going to build. I probably missed something. No overloaded function. Yeah, that looks like I missed something. So return sprite state. This should be return boost make tuple. Now I think that I hit everything. So build, run, just kind of go through the different poses that quote has. And I am happy. This is it. This is the end of the episode. Thanks for watching, guys. This has been fun. Happy developing.